Hey, and welcome to another episode of Back from the Future, where we talk about technology from the past and the present and the future. Now, today we are going to be talking about the latest 3D printer released by Bambu Labs, the X2D, and I think it was released about 2 days ago. I've been sort of not so well recently. So I would have liked to have done it on the day of release, but there you go. You can't, change the forces of nature, so to speak. It is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. So let's get down and get to the brass tacks. Now, just for context, I actually own two printers, a Creality V3 SE and a Bambu Labs P1S, which I still haven't got round to editing the unboxing video. And that was like, I bought that thing last year, and in that amount of time the P2S came out, more or less just after I'd bought the P1S, and I was like, but to be honest, the P1S has been so amazing. I've not really felt the need, or I've not had buyer's remorse. I'm going to be honest, I've not had buyer's remorse because it's doing everything I want it to do. And like now with Bambu Labs like releasing the P1S and now the X2D, I'm thinking to myself, what would be the point of upgrading it? Now, so let's get on with the X2D and what it's all about. The X2D is more or less a replacement for the X1 Carbon. Now, I think the X, unless I'm mistaken, means experimental, or to experiment with different kinds of weird and wonderful filaments. That's what it was originally designed for. Because when the P1S was, or P1, then P1S, and the X1 Carbon were around, the P1 series had the stainless steel nozzles, and the X1 Carbon had the fancy hardened steel nozzle that could handle all the carbon fibre filaments and all that. The bed sizes were the same, the quality was the same, but X1 Carbon had a lot of bells and whistles, like it had like a flashy screen, and it had AI to detect birds nesting, so it was quite a more of a premium product, so to speak. Whereas the P1S, maybe we could say, was more of a cut down printer. But to be honest, the P1S is an absolute workhorse. I mean, and you can see it's a very favourite printer to be used in print farms. Now, again, like I said, I'd just like to say for context, because people in the future will be saying, oh, Zane, you are a fanboy of Bambu Labs. And so from what I've been reading and knowing, that the Bambu Labs printers just have the best quality out there for 3D printing. But that's not to say that someone like Prusa isn't far behind, so there you go. And if you want something that you can take out the box and you want it with minimum of fuss, without having to tinker, because things like Creality and until recently with the K1 printers, they've been more tinker. They were good for tinkerers who wanted to make adjustments, who wanted to get inside the guts of it. For me, I haven't got the time. I need to get something that works out the box and works like a gem, and the Bambu printers have done that for me so far. And I like to remain objective. I don't try to have loyalties, because I mean, for example, Creality, even though I've got the V3 SE, the thing about it is that was a really nice printer out of the box, and it did its job. And the thing is, it didn't actually require that much tinkering. I put it together myself, and it was a nice involved process. It was a nice printer. I mean, at some point I'll let it go in the not so distant future. But again, Creality also make amazing scanners as well, which Prusa don't do, or Bambu Labs don't do. They don't make 3D scanners. and also they're bringing out a filament recycling machine. All these different companies all are bringing something new to the table, which helps us, the makers in this world, right? And that's the way I look at it. I'll take one from one product from one company, one product from that, one product from that. Although I haven't taken anything from Prusa at all, that's not to say that in the future I won't. Who knows? They've got, like, their X1 is an absolute beast, and to be honest, you need a large place to stick that machine, but it is a beast and it does its job. But anyway, I digress. We're going to go back onto the X2D now and talk about what the Jackanory story regarding this printer is. Now, the irony is, with the P1S and a P2S, you had a build plate of 256, 256, 256. Now, because this printer has a dual nozzle, on paper the build plate is 256, 256, 260. The actual working build plate is slightly smaller, 23.5 times 256 times 256. So you lose a little bit to accommodate that extra head. And after all, this is a dual-headed beast, so to speak. The nozzle heats up to 300 degrees and the bed also heats up to 120 degrees, and it has an active heated chamber that will heat the inside chamber up to 65 degrees. Again, some of these little, how can I say, experimental filaments do require some extra heat and heat circulation and so forth. It also has dynamic flow calibration, anti-vibration compensation, and an AI sensor as well, like the X1 Carbon did. Now the thing is, what a lot of people aren't realizing, what is the actual angle of this printer? Well, what it's doing is, because it's sort of specializing itself for these more exotic filaments, it will also, with the dual head, it will allow you to use material support. So for example, if you're using PETG, you can use PLA as a support material. If you're using ABS, you can use PETG as a support material. And because these two filaments don't like bonding to each other, when you use supports of another material, it's easy to break away. And obviously some of these exotic materials are a lot more money, like 3 times plus of it, like for example using basic PLA. And because of that, you can reduce costs, because if you're using a very expensive filament, you don't want to then use a very expensive the same filament as a support structure. That's a waste. And plus, because they're very similar materials, you don't get a good enough finish as if you use a different filament, because it's, when you separate it, there's still that interaction, that join, because they're similar compounds basically. Now the thing is, with this printer you get one, the first nozzle is the main nozzle, and then you get what people are calling, like, the second nozzle is like an accessory nozzle. One's direct drive, and what the first nozzle is direct drive, and the adjacent nozzle, it runs on a Bowden extension basically from the back. Now the reason they've gone with Bowden is because it makes the head, it reduces the mass of the head, because when you've got a direct drive head, that adds a lot of weight. And so if you have the second head on the Bowden, a lot of that weight is slung around the back, so it makes the head far more responsive, which is a very good thing. Also, because the main head is doing all the work theoretically, the accuracy on the second head, because it's a Bowden not direct drive, isn't as good as the main head. But you don't need that kind of precision for supports, right? Now here's the interesting caveat. With Bambu Labs, they like to over deliver. They're very humble, but yet they over deliver. Now you can see other people who've had this printer, they've been able to, on test, they've been able to hook up AMS on the main print head and another AMS on the second print head. You're not really supposed to, but you can. And they've printed things side by side with two different heads, and the quality difference is, hard to tell. Now, do take into account they were using brand new printer extruders, right? So maybe over time the degradation will become more significant. Who knows? So you can actually use this like a sort of a Snapmaker U1. You could have one filament on the left nozzle and a different filament on the right nozzle, or you could have two AMSs with all kinds of different color combinations and so forth. That's not its primary basically thing, but you can do that and you can get away with it, and that's where at the end of the video I'll delve a little bit more into detail about that. Also, the second head, because it goes through the Bowden extruder, it's actually significantly slower than the main head. Something like the Snapmaker U1 will be a lot faster on multicolored printing. Now the thing about Bambu Labs is what their primary aim is to increase surface quality and reduce post-processing of an item. So where before, like on my P1S, I'll print something, I might have to tidy it up a bit. You don't have to do that so much with the X2D. And also, because of that, you reduce the support damage. Sometimes I've pulled off support structure and it's damaged the model, which has not been helpful. It happened when I was putting this thing together, and if you've ever made one of these together, that little head there you have to build with support can get easily damaged, and I've had to print a couple of these out in my time. So theoretically that would print out on a the filament spooler rewinder. That theoretically that would be, and that little component there would be easy to print on the X2D because the support structure is different. Now the thing is, the king of this multi-material printer is for its price is the Snapmaker U1. It's king of the multi-material color changes. But the reason the way I look at it is, if you've got an Etsy store and you want to print out these like little cute models and so forth, Snapmaker U1 is your go-to printer. Now if you're more like into making engineering stuff to an engineering standard and accuracy, but also want to throw in potentially a bit of different colored stuff as well, and you want this printer to be running pretty much day and night, Bambu Labs is the one. If you want accuracy and if you want quality, you can't go wrong with a Bambu Labs printer. The thing is, with the Snapmaker U1, you do have an awful lot, almost as next to nothing in terms of waste. Whereas if you were using the X2D the same way you'd use a Snapmaker, you would have, not if you use two colors, if you're using two different filaments, you could equal that of a Snapmaker. But if you're using multicolors, remember also with the Snapmaker U1, I think you can only use 4 different colors, because you can add as many AMSs as you want. I think you can go up to something in the low 20s in terms of all the different filaments you want to use, which is kind of crazy. Now let's get on to pricing. Now going on the Bambu Labs website, we're going to mention three Bambu Labs printers: the P1S, the P2S, and the X2D. Now the reason I mention this is for context, because the P1S is still in the game, because the bed sizes are all similar, right? Now if you have a look, the P1S is 339 UK pounds, but in the US it's 399 pounds for the single printer on its own. If you want it with the AMS combo, which I recommend, it's $549 or £479. So what, argument's sake, right, 150 pounds or stroke dollars more. And if you look at the P2S in UK pounds on its own is £479 or $549. With the combo, £699 or $799. Now this is quite interesting now when we get to the X2D. Again, so that it comes in on its own £569, but you'd never buy that on its own, or $649. With the combo, it comes in at £769 or $899. So, you know, the way I look at it, you know, if you're looking at it's all very, very divisive, because the gap is between getting like the P1S, the P2S, or the X2D. It's like 150, you know, with the combo with the AMS, it's like 150 quid more, which is like, you know, there's 15 rolls of filament between them all. In terms of, you know, if you want to look at it like that, you're almost forced to get the X2D combo, really, because you've got all the bells and whistles with the extra head. You do lose a little bit on the outer edges of the build plate. Again, if you're printing something really big, which I don't do often, I may do, but if you're not doing it often, then X2D is a brilliant value for money, because I know that when the X1 Carbon and the P1S came out, the pricing was significantly different. You were paying a lot more money, you know, to bridge the gap. But those days are gone. You're only paying 150 quid difference every time you, or something like that, every time you go up a model, and you know, it's increasing returns over time. You with the new generation of Bambu Labs printers, you get in so much more for your money. There is so much technology getting packed into this. Now, my personal perspective is, I've got a P1S. If I was to get a second printer, what would I get? And you know, I have been, you know, on a rocking course, going forwards and backwards. For me, if I'm going to go dual nozzle, I might end up getting the H2D, because I actually need a bigger plate for some of my up and coming projects, where I need bigger volume of heat, and I'll need dual heads, and I may end up paying the price of two X2Ds to get that model, but you know, the H2D, but it is what it is. It just means that some of the stuff, instead of having to, because I don't like slicing my models and having to print them out, You know, I like to have it done on one bed as one complete unit. So that may be the way for me to go. It all depends on how these projects play out. But to be honest, if you're starting a print farm, the P1S is still in the game. Because it also uses a lot less electricity than these two do. I know that because of the active chamber heating on the X2D, it significantly takes up a lot more heat. You might be better off with the P1S on the print farm, but if it's just a standalone unit, if you don't need the extra bits on the edges of the build plate, go for the X2D. But there's not much in them. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and it's all lovely to see you guys again, and I'll see all of you on the next episode.
If you liked this video, please feel free to subscribe to our channel, press the bell notification button, and get notified when a new video comes out. Please leave a thumbs up. If you enjoyed this video, please leave comments and let us know what your thoughts and suggestions are for future videos.
And we will see you in the future, if there is one.